Look around you. Every person you have ever met carries hair that behaves in its own unique way. Some falls straight like a curtain, some bends into loose waves, some twists into tight curls, and some grows in dense little coils, almost like tiny springs. Most of us treat this as nothing more than a style choice, something to brush, straighten, or simply leave alone. But hair does not sit on just any part of the body. It grows directly above the most fragile organ a human being carries, the brain. So what if the shape of your hair is not random at all? What if it is actually a leftover trace of a survival problem your ancient ancestors had to solve long before mirrors or salons ever existed? Today we go underneath the surface, into biology, genetics, and evolutionary history, to finally understand why human hair looks so different from head to head. To understand hair, we first have to understand skin. Humans are strange among primates. Chimpanzees, gorillas, and most other apes stay covered in thick fur head to toe. Humans do not. Somewhere in our distant past, we lost most of our body hair, and in exchange gained millions of active sweat glands spread across bare skin. That turned the human body into a cooling machine. Bare, sweaty skin releases heat far faster than skin trapped under fur. And that advantage mattered once early humans began chasing prey across hot, open land. Losing fur helped the body survive the sun. But it raises an obvious question. If losing hair helped us survive, why did one part of the body keep it? Why does thick hair still grow? Almost everywhere on Earth, right on top of the head, compressed was the dip. The answer sits under the scalp. The brain is the most demanding organ we carry. It burns a huge share of daily energy, generates constant heat, and unlike muscle, cannot tolerate overheating. Even a small rise in temperature can slow it down. Now picture an early human walking upright under direct equatorial sun for hours. The scalp faces the sky almost head-on, with nothing between skin and sunlight. Losing hair everywhere else cooled the body. Losing it on the scalp too would have left the brain dangerously exposed. So the body faced two opposite needs at once: release heat, yet shield the brain. This tension may be exactly where the story of hair diversity begins. So scientists decided to test it. Instead of just guessing, researchers built a life-sized thermal mannequin, heated to match real skin temperature, and placed it in a climate-controlled wind tunnel with artificial sunlight on its head. They fitted it with different wigs: bald, straight, wavy, tightly coiled. Then they measured how much heat reached the scalp under each. The results were striking. Every hair type blocked some solar heat compared to a bare scalp. But tightly coiled hair performed best of all. It created a thick, springy layer lifted away from the skin, letting air flow underneath while still shading the scalp from direct rays. In some tests, coiled hair was the only style that let the head lose heat without needing extra sweat. A built-in cooling system that costs the body nothing. But why does hair coil in the first place? The answer is buried beneath the skin, inside a tiny structure called the follicle. A straight, symmetrical follicle grows hair that comes out round and even, so it lies flat. A curved, hook-shaped follicle grows hair that twists as it emerges, because one side of the strand grows slightly differently from the other. Slice open a curly strand under a microscope, and you find two cell types side by side. One softer and more absorbent on the outer edge of the curl, one stiffer on the inner edge. These two halves expand and contract at different rates, pulling against each other. That tension bends the strand into a spiral. Nothing about curling is accidental. It is a mechanical outcome, engineered cell by cell before hair ever leaves the skin. Once coiled hair became the human default in equatorial regions. Something unexpected happened as populations spread across the planet. In places with far less direct sunlight, the pressure favoring coiled hair began to fade, and new genetic variations quietly spread. In East Asia, one gene linked to skin structure picked up a small mutation, and that mutation shot upward in frequency over thousands of years. It reshaped more than hair. It also affected tooth shape and sweat gland density, because that is how genes often work. One small change ripples into several unrelated traits. Straighter, thicker hair may not have been the target of selection at all. It may simply have been carried along for the ride, an accidental side effect. Evolution rarely aims at one single trait alone. Meanwhile, in Europe, an almost identical outcome, straighter hair, developed through a completely different genetic route. The East Asian mutation is barely present in European populations at all. Instead, European hair texture is shaped by a whole network of different genes. One's tied to structural proteins inside the strand, and enzymes that shape hair as it grows. No single gene dominates. Dozens of smaller variations combine, nudging hair slightly straighter or slightly clear, depending on which combination a person inherits. So two populations on opposite sides of the planet arrived at similar-looking straight hair through entirely separate biological paths. That is not one shared inheritance. That is convergent evolution, nature solving the same problem twice. With two completely different toolkits, ancient DNA has overturned assumptions about who looked like what and when. Take a hunter-gatherer who lived in Britain roughly 10,000 years ago, long after modern humans had settled across cold, cloudy northern Europe. Genetic analysis revealed dark skin, striking blue eyes, and tightly coiled dark hair, a combination that breaks every assumption about ancient Europeans. Thousands of years after leaving Africa, in weak sunlight and freezing winters, coiled hair had still not disappeared. On the other end of the map, a genome pulled from 4,000-year-old Greenland permafrost already carried the straight hair variant, now common across East Asia and the Americas. These finds prove something important. Hair, skin, and eye color never traveled together as one fixed package. They shifted independently, on separate timelines, shaped as much by chance and migration as by climate. So why do humans end up with so many different hair textures? Not because nature experimented until it found one correct version. Not because any single texture is more evolved or more original than another. Every version, straight, wavy, curly, tightly coiled, represents a different survival story, written by climate, migration, mutation, chance, and time, layered across millions of years. A single strand can carry a follicle's geometry, a handful of ancient genes, a record of where your ancestors walked, and echoes of a mutation that started somewhere else entirely. What we call style today may have begun as survival. What we decorate, cut, and shape by choice may once have decided whether a brain overheated under an unforgiving sun. Hair was never simple decoration. It has always been a living record of human history. But did you know that our ancestors weren't always light-skinned? So what actually happened? What was the reason that human skin went from dark to lighter over thousands of years? To find out, watch this video.